Thank you very much, Chairman Inhofe. Everybody has always said around here when you talk about legislating and getting things done, what's one of the ways to do it, and always an essential is having a strong chairman. So thank you so much, because I know you pushed and pulled and you did whatever it took to work both the Senate side and the House side, and I really appreciate that. You know, somebody asked me, how does this feel? And I'm a mountain climber, and when you're on the top of a summit, it's pure elation. And that's how I feel today. And this feeling is pretty close to that mountain climbing. The only thing we're lacking is the beautiful, inspiring landscape. And so I'm here just honored to share this magnificent achievement in this toxic environment, and pardon the pun here, with all of my colleagues that are surrounding me up here. I think this is a great triumph of bipartisanship. You know, most Americans think when you go to a grocery store or you go to a hardware store and you buy a product, they think that it's been tested for safety. It hasn't been tested. And now we're going to see that that testing is in place, and we move forward with a very tough cop on the beat, which will be the EPA, looking at the safety of products, doing that analysis, and I'm going to be all over the implementation of this, because I think that's a very important step. And many of us were over in the House of Representatives for the joint statement. I talked to Gina McCarthy. She says she's going to get this thing implemented and get it up and rolling, and she's well aware that this is headed in her direction. But I just want to touch a couple of things before I introduce Senator Vitter, who has been my great partner in this. This new law will require the EPA, and these are the big things that it does. It's going to do many other things. This will require the EPA to protect the most vulnerable people: children, the elderly, pregnant women, and chemical workers. It will give the EPA new authority to order tests and ensure chemicals are safe, starting with the biggest risk, such as known carcinogens and those with high toxicity. Ensure the EPA reviews new chemicals before they go on the market. They weren't even able to do that. And provide the EPA with resources to do the job. Industry will do its share to support the program, providing $25 million a year. That is significant in the climate that we exist in here in Washington, and set mandatory enforceable deadlines for the EPA to act. And so that's going to lead, I think, to a very good, strong regulator on top of all of this. But let me just say a couple of words, first of all, about my partner, David Vitter. You know, we met 3 years ago. We had dinner. We picked this up from Frank Lautenberg, who had really kicked it off. We're kind of here in the spirit of Frank Lautenberg, because the bipartisanship here started with Frank. When he introduced his bill with Senator Vitter, they had 12 Democrats and 12 Republicans working together. He passed away 6 weeks later. Senator Vitter and I mourned him, and then we sat down for dinner and we said, what do we do to carry this on? And we both just committed to each other we were going to get this done. And he's been a great partner. He's kept his word. Whenever he asked me to do something, I did it, and it would work, and the same thing was true the other way around. So we have a speaking order up here. I know that Senator Markey wants to come in a little earlier because no, but okay, we'll stick with it. So the folks that have joined us here, every one of them played a key role. And you've got to understand, when you do something this big and this magnificent, you're going to have a lot of people. So, you know, Jack Kennedy used to say that victory creates 1,000 fathers and defeat is an orphan. Well, this is a case where we have victory, and we don't have 1,000 fathers up here yet, but we're going to get some.
Senator Udall, I was wondering if you could, as an important environment appropriator, what will you do to ensure that implementation is properly funded? there's legislation, your legislation on the Environment and Interior Subcommittee will likely surface in the coming week or 2 weeks. Will there be a portion of the EPA allocation that is carved out for TSCA reform implementation specifically?
Yeah, thank you very much. And let me explain the funding. I mean, you're getting me into the weeds a little bit, but I think it's important to understand it, and it's a very good question. The current EPA funding for TSCA is approximately $56 million per year. This funding is appropriated by Congress and used to process new chemicals and other work that the agency does. User fees are small and go to the general treasury, and under the bill, the funding's going to change. The current $56 million will be supplemented with user fees from industry. That will equal 25% of the fees and up to $25 million per year if the appropriations go up. User fees will go to the EPA's TSCA Implementation Fund, not to the Treasury. It will come as a fee for service to pay for testing, prioritizing, processing new and existing chemicals. The industry can nominate additional chemicals for review. If EPA agrees to review them, and that's in their discretion, the industry will pay 100% of the cost. So we have different ways of getting it funding, but clearly what I'm going to be fighting for is to make sure that EPA has the funds to do the job, because this is too important to our families and too important to our children.
Do you have any type of idea on how much you're going to have to allocate for implementation in this coming fiscal year, so with this legislation that you're working on?
Well, we aren't marking up our bill. I believe the bill until June the 14th, and I don't even know if that's that firm a date. So I would like to get back to you on that day as to what we're looking at and where we're headed.
Thanks, sir.
Okay, thank you. That's where we're marking up in the subcommittee, and I think several days later marking up in the main committee. Other questions, thoughts? Just while you're thinking, let me say one thing. One of the things, several of the speakers mentioned this, the professional staff and how hard they worked, and I just want to thank Jennifer Talhelm with my office, Jonathan Black, Andrew Wallace, and then the whole team in my office that kind of took up the slack because they were working on this very focused issue for so long. And last night I did a much wider thank you of everyone. In fact, Senator McCain, when we interrupt his bill, accused me of thanking everybody in the world. But there were so many people that worked on it, and we'll get you that list if you want to see it. But it's been pretty amazing how the staff and the members have all pulled together to get this done. Yeah, please go ahead.
With law on the books, what do you want to see from EPA as they turn to implement this new authority?
Yeah, you bet. Excellent question. Here's what we think with EPA and how it will be set up. First, we need to manage expectations and ensure that we get off on the right foot, not the fastest foot. It needs to start on a manageable scale to build capacity and then turn the ship around. We need to make sure EPA is able to do the job, and as we talked about here, making sure that the funding's there. This bill gives 6 months to select the first 10 chemicals. EPA will not miss that deadline. That's one of the enforceable deadlines I talked about. It will take 3 to 6 months to select 10 chemicals. The Obama EPA will make that decision, obviously. It is the first deadline in the bill, the enforceable deadline. EPA has already begun to set chemical priorities before this law was passed. I expect EPA will not throw away the work they've done on work plans and putting those chemicals in the various orders. And I hope they will prioritize chemicals like asbestos and other hazardous chemicals on their work plan. They are considering flame retardants and some solvents, things like, and this one's a tough one, but ibromopropane, which is propane, and we'll get you the right spelling of that. There are plenty of other early candidates. I don't want to jump too far out on the EPA, but several regulations in the bill will have a 1-year deadline, and as soon as it's signed, EPA will start cranking and get up and get going with the job. The $56 million appropriations is enough for EPA to start on the first 10, and once the fees kick in 3 years, the EPA will begin identifying more chemicals, a minimum of 20, and they have the ability, I think, to do more than that. So I think that all the procedures will need to be in place in the next 2 years. So I think that covers pretty well what we're doing there. I think you had a question?
Yeah, Senator Paul took to the floor before you guys passed it and voiced some concerns about overregulation and just EPA implementing the actual law. What would you say in response to some of those things that Senator Paul had raised as potential pitfalls to the bill?
Well, I first of all think this raises the issue of preemption, and we got to go into the weeds a little bit there. But on overregulation, there's very, very little regulation right now. The system is completely broken. The EPA does not have the ability to do its job at all because in 1991 of a court ruling that basically gutted the agency. And so I think if you really look at what the issue is putting them back up and operating on a viable basis. And so I don't think this is anywhere near what you would call an issue of overregulation. This is about standing up an agency and getting it to do its job. But let me talk about the part of it that you've also indicated here on preemption. And here are the basics, and I believe it represents really a fair balance between state power and federal power. States would not be preempted where EPA is not acting on a specific chemical and uses. And there are thousands of chemicals out there, 85,000 in existence. And so though all those thousands that are out there are open to regulation by states, so there's more than enough for everyone to work on. If the EPA is working on 20 or 25, you still have probably several thousand that are considered dangerous that the states can work on. So there's a lot of work for both state and federal government. There's no preemption of individual rights to go to court for damages, which is incredibly important. The bill makes clear it does not intervene or affect ongoing litigation. And you've seen many of the articles around the country. There are various lawsuits going on chemicals against big chemical companies. We're not impacting any of those at all. The bill makes clear that it does not intervene, and as I said, that kind of litigation. And the pause preemption is limited to just the risk evaluation period of around 3 years and structured so that it doesn't stop states who have begun acting. This is key, and it benefits all states that are out there. And the other final issue is the waiver issue. There are reasonable waivers from preemption for state, from both pause and final preemption when the EPA has finalized a restriction. And so we give a lot of liberty to states to act and the federal government to act, and we also give that uniformity that I think the business community has been looking for. And let me also just say what several of the others have said about this photograph here. This photograph was taken by Bonnie Lautenberg. Bonnie, and this is Frank and his grandchildren. He used to talk every day in the committee about his grandchildren, and when he would ask questions, you could see he was always thinking, how does this affect my children and my grandchildren? And that was his passion. He always believed, Frank believed that this would impact his children and grandchildren more than anything he did in public life. And he was one champion on public health. You'll remember the things he did on smoking, airlines, indoor air pollution, all of those kinds of things. And I really believe that. I think that's true. And so Bonnie took that and that photo, and she was our guiding light. As everybody said here, I'm just sorry she couldn't be standing here with us. She'll be down for whatever the president does, I'm sure. And she would make phone calls. She was persistent, even yesterday in terms of the scheduling. She was on the phone with Mitch McConnell to say, when can we get this scheduled? So she's been a pretty amazing kind of 101st senator to be a part of this process. So with that, Jen, are we doing? Yeah. Okay. I think we're we're holding up the rest of the gallery here, but go ahead.
Just quickly, so
Yeah.
is it your impression that you may not need more than $56 million to pursue implementation over the coming fiscal year? My impression of the fees is that they will actually start to accumulate further down the line, so you might need a kind of front.
Jonathan, what do you say on that? I mean, I think they have the ability to start out, is my understanding, and because he really knows this backwards and forwards. My understanding, the $56 million, they feel they have the ability to start this process of selecting the 10 and moving forward on the 10, and then we'll be working on the appropriations in the future. Is that, Jonathan, what do you think?
We structured the fees by working with EPA. That's how we picked the numbers. That's how we figured out this is the first 10 that we could do from their base budget. They'll be writing a rule to collect fees, and as time goes by, they'll be building capacity. So that's where we'll be adding up to 20 in the next coming years. But to begin, that 56 should be appropriate.
And remember also again, if a chemical company has a chemical they want reviewed, they can and they believe it's urgent, they can come to the EPA and they can say, we want this one reviewed. The EPA has the discretion, but then the company pays 100%. And so you have the ability to supplement what you're doing with companies that are making that kind of selection. And so that works from the beginning, right, Jonathan? So tomorrow, when we get this signed and the first day afterwards, if a company comes forward, then they pay 100%, and that obviously, that fee goes into the fund, but then it will be supplementing the budget that's there for the EPA. So thank you all very much. Jen Talhelm is my communications director. If you have any other questions, we'd be happy to walk you through all of this. And there are many of the other staff members that worked very hard on this, and I just want to thank them all. They really did a terrific job. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patience.